All right. Good morning, everyone. We are going to give a minute or two to have our participants join us. We're so thrilled to see so many people that are passionate about what's happening in North County right now and here this morning with us. Just going to wait a moment. We've got a great turnout. It's very exciting to see all of these wonderful names pouring in on the screen. Thank you for being here. All right, well, we can go ahead and get started here. My name is Jenny Cammey. Good morning, everyone. I am the director of the Hive at Leech-Tag Commons. We are the Center for Collaboration, Connection, and Creativity at Leech-Tag Commons. And, you know, many have said, like, well, what's your role in this new virtual COVID world? And we really feel, and I think that today's session is an example of how we can still be creative through our funding strategies, be collaborating with our most important community partners, and still stay connected with our community. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sharon Goodson. Just wanted to make a note that today's session is being recorded and the link will be available if anyone wants to share it. And we are simultaneously broadcasting on Facebook Live. So those are the two ways if you want to share this information with anyone that you can do that. And with that, I turn it over to Leech-Tag Foundation's Vice President of Philanthropy, Sharon Goodson. Thanks, Sharon.
Great. Thank you so much, Jenny. Welcome, everybody. So happy to have you join us this morning to learn about community needs that have resulted due to the ripple effects of the pandemic. And we're going to do this through the work of three extraordinary nonprofit leaders. Greg Anglea from Interfaith Community Services, Andrea Guerrero from Alliance San Diego and the Immigrant Relief Fund, and Jodie Grenier from Foundation for Women Warriors. These organizations represent 3 of the 26 that have received funding from the North County COVID-19 Response Fund. This fund was launched the 3rd week of March to help address the basic needs of vulnerable populations in North County as we quickly saw the ripple effects of COVID-19 accelerate. We thought that we could best address these needs if we worked together with others and coordinated our response. So the Coastal Community Foundation, Leech-Tag Foundation, and Rancho Santa Fe Foundation joined forces to create this fund. It has been a real honor and privilege to work with longtime trusted colleagues and friends, and they are all on this call. From the Coastal Community Foundation, Sharon Omahen, the Executive Director, and John Kelting, the Board Chair. From Rancho Santa Fe Foundation, Christy Wilson, President and CEO, Debbie Anderson, Programs Director, B.N. Walker, Director of Donor Engagement, and Alice Ashcroft, Grants Committee Chair. And of course, the amazing Jessica Court, the Director of Communications and Strategy, who works with me at the Leech-Tag Foundation. To date, with the generous help of 70 donors, the fund has granted $506,000 to 26 nonprofits. The fund also leveraged an additional $553,000 from individual donors in North County. And this is all told, well over $1 million have gone to local efforts. We're only seeing a need in the increase of support that we need to have in order to continue to address community needs, and our speakers will talk to that. But as I mentioned this morning, back to the most important, is that we have 3 incredible organization and community leaders with us. They're deeply rooted in their communities and understand both the challenges and opportunities through and through. We've asked our speakers, each of whom work with people of diverse backgrounds, races, etc., to address issues around racial inequities and resource disparities head on. So first, some introductions. Greg Anglea is CEO of Interfaith Community Services. He is immediate past board president of Alliance for Regional Solutions, board member of the Regional Task Force on the Homeless, co-chair of the North County Live Well Leadership Team, and immediate past president of the North County Philanthropy Council. Interfaith Community Services has seen a 400% increase in demand for grocery assistance during the crisis and is providing emergency housing, food, employment, addiction, mental health, and financial relief. Andrea Guerrero of Alliance San Diego previously served as the field and policy director of our local ACLU and practiced immigration law. Originally from Mexico City, Andrea views the world from binational, bicultural, and bilingual lenses. She's dedicated her professional life to protecting civil rights and advancing social justice. Alliance San Diego holds the Immigrant Relief Fund, supporting immigrants who have lost all or part of their wages due to COVID-19. And last but certainly not least, Jodie Grenier, Chief Executive Officer of Foundation for Women Warriors. Her military service laid the foundation for her career in intelligence and national security. Jodie was a founding member, Director of Development, Vice President of the Marine Reconnaissance Foundation. Foundation for Women Warriors provides assistance in attaining financial stability, childcare, employment, healthcare, and housing for even more women veterans during the pandemic. So, pretty lucky to have these folks with us. Welcome, welcome. Greg, we're gonna start with you. As the leader of a large, comprehensive social service organization, could you start by sharing what you and your team are seeing with regard to community needs related to COVID-19 and how you've expanded or pivoted services as a result?
Sure, thanks Sharon, and thank you to the funders of the North County Fund. It's amazing to see so much dollars come into and stay in our community in this time of need, so thank you for that. And I'm looking at the attendees and I see a lot of my nonprofit colleagues who I know have received support as well, so I think we all want to say thank you. Because the needs have gotten so much greater than they were before. Sharon, you mentioned that our requests for food assistance went up more than 400%. That was really in the month of April and the initial kind of on need. And a lot of what we focused on helping people apply for unemployment benefits, helping people to be able to secure their stimulus check if they're eligible for it, and just to be able to get the things that were being made available. Also understanding that for a lot of people, they were not able to get unemployment in a timely way, or just the change in their income created. Did a lot of personal work to help keep people housed, keep people current on their rent. The evictions may have paused, but the bills are still due to keep families and individuals from being 4 months behind, or any more behind than they have to be. One of our employment programs in Carlsbad was working with individuals who were experiencing homelessness, and we got 14 people into jobs in the early part of this year out of a shelter that's operated by Catholic Charities in Carlsbad, a partnership. 14 people into jobs. We had a whole bunch that were actually scheduled to begin EMT training that's operated in person. That EMT training was canceled in March. And of the 14 who had secured jobs, 11 were immediately laid off. Mm. So when we talk about, or when you hear about unemployment rates at 25% or whatever the figures are stated, among the populations that we're serving, low-income populations, communities of color, individuals with different vulnerabilities and challenges, the rates are much higher. We're thankfully beginning to see more people, more hiring and getting more people back into the workforce, doing work to keep people housed. Our addiction treatment programs have been very active. We're probably the only detox that's still accepting new individuals, regardless of their ability to pay in the county of San Diego. So that's been a very active thing, helping people get into sobriety amidst the pandemic. And then also managing, we have about 134 people right now in hotel rooms who are unsheltered and have health conditions or are over the age of 65, and helping those individuals to stabilize and to be able to shelter in place, but ideally to be able to end their homelessness. And so we're working to try to make the best of that. It could go on, there's a lot more, but yeah, there's a lot going on, and the support of the fund really helps us to be able to meet some of these increased needs.
Well, thank you so much, Greg. I know you and your team are working so hard on the front lines, and when a lot of us are home working and working hard for sure, but they have been going in every day, and we all appreciate it so much. So thank you. Andrea, shifting over to you, we understand that immigrant community is particularly at risk during this time. Could you please share the reasons for this and what Alliance San Diego and particularly the Immigrant Relief Fund are doing in response?
Yeah, thank you, Sharon. And I do have slides. I don't know if now is the time to show them.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, great. All right. Well, thank you for inviting me into the conversation. So the Alliance San Diego, which is the organization that I am a part of, is a community empowerment organization working with diverse people and organizations to help them engage more effectively in the civic process to build a more inclusive and humane and just world. As part of that work, we build, nurture, and sustain a number of coalitions. One of them is the San Diego Immigrant Rights Consortium, which is made up of over 60 organizations in the San Diego County that are working to uphold the human rights of immigrants and refugees. And so just by way of background, in case you are new to the work of immigrant and refugee rights, there are roughly 1 million immigrants. They include refugees in San Diego County. And that means that more than a quarter of us, myself included, were born abroad. And we come from over 100 countries, although the leading countries are Mexico, Philippines, and China. Half of all children in the county have an immigrant parent, and that's important to keep in mind when we're thinking about resourcing immigrants. They are part of mixed status families. That also means we're resourcing US citizen children. In terms of legal status, 2/3 of immigrants here in the county are citizens or permanent residents, and roughly 1/3 have no legal status and no pathway to get it currently. The majority of those have lived and worked here more than 10 years, and they cannot apply for unemployment insurance. They are also not eligible for the CARES Act. So they didn't get the check from the president, and they can't currently access some of the funds that are supporting other workers who have lost wages and jobs in the pandemic. As a result, the SCIRC, in conjunction with Alliance San Diego, has put together an immigrant relief fund to help families. And the fund is managed by Alliance San Diego, and the awards are made by the SCIRC Advisory Board on a weekly basis. We are granting $500 checks to families who are not eligible for CARES. This is a picture of one of those families. That's Miguel and his wife and his young daughter receiving the check that we had granted to them last week. To date, we've been able to help over 600 families like Miguel's to receive funds, and those funds are being used to make up for lost wages due to the pandemic. And the money is going to pay for food and rent and bills, basic necessities. We have so many stories to share, but I did want to share this note in particular, and it says, if you can't read it, it's a thank you note. Thank you. We were desperate for not knowing how rent would be paid. By receiving these funds, my family can have enough to eat and prevent from becoming homeless. And that's really like, those are the stakes with these grants. They're not a lot of money, but they are enough to prevent people from going into the streets and becoming homeless. So just a profile of the awardees, of the over 600 awardees. 1/3 live in North County, so that's roughly 200. They come from over 15 countries. Most have US citizen children. They are restaurant workers, domestic workers, construction workers, hospitality workers, gardening workers, farm workers, and workers in other sectors. And they have all either lost hours or lost jobs in this pandemic. and they have been incredibly grateful, and they've called and they've written to share their gratitude. But the need is great, as others have already mentioned. We have over 12,000 applicants to our fund, of which we've made 600 grants. We've raised to date $750,000, which will be enough for 1,500 awards. Some of that money is not through the door yet, so that's why we haven't made those grants yet. But that's what we've been able to raise in commitments. And the San Diego community has been very generous. We have over 380 donors who have helped contribute towards the total raised. We also have been very grateful to have the support of 6 generous foundations, and that includes all of you who make up the North County COVID-19 Fund. We are incredibly, deeply grateful for all that you have done for us. That's a roundup of what we're doing, and happy to answer any questions. And I will stop sharing the screen.
Thank you so much, Andrea. That's great. Really, really helpful. And what you're saying is really we're seeing over and over as we look at funding requests for the fund. I think food has been the biggest need, but the emergency assistance that's provided by all 3 of your organizations is right there. So for food, rent, utilities, even with the relief provided by companies and landlords, the moratorium on evictions, it's coming up over and over. So thank you for responding to that. Jodie, we know that active military and veterans are another target population that's particularly vulnerable, especially those lower level enlisted military who aren't paid much, to begin with, to be living here in San Diego. Could you provide some background about Foundation for Women Warriors and how you guys have been responding?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me today, Sharon, and thank you to the North County COVID Fund for your support at such a critical time. Our organization is in its 100th year this week. We celebrated our Centennial Anniversary. We started off as a housing association for widows and mothers of fallen service members, along with war nurses. Our history is really women's history. We have this illustrious history of enhancing the economic well-being of women, but as we've seen over the years, as laws change, hearts and minds and bias is slower to change. And so now we serve solely women veterans throughout Southern California, of which close to 50% of our women veterans reside here in San Diego County. So when we talk about the veteran population, women veterans have historically been underserved and underrepresented and overshadowed by their male counterparts. I think our society's slow to acknowledge that women have served in all different capacities. We sometimes have a bias that a veteran, if we close our eyes and think of a veteran, we think of a man. So women veterans are the fastest growing segment of women, which is awesome because they're serving at increasing numbers every year. However, they are also the fastest growing segment of homeless veterans. We have within our organization, 70% of the women that we serve are single parents, which just adds to the complexity of most of the women that serve this country that we're seeing put their education on hold. So when they transition out of the military, they're not just looking for a job, they're looking for to finish their degrees or achieve some sort of higher education certificate. And with some of them having children and being single parents, this just makes their journey a little bit more difficult. So as we have this underserved and vulnerable population, we knew immediately once COVID began to rear its ugly head that this was only going to put our at-risk population in a completely different situation, or even more at risk. We saw women that we had helped in the past come back to us at 20%, and that's continuing to increase. So women that were already on the path to success and self-sustainable had lost their jobs. And then we were seeing an increase in new clients. So one of the things that we did was we looked at what are our eligibility requirements and who are we excluding. So in the past where we had to work with, where we had an eligibility requirement, in order to receive assistance, you had to either be in school or working or agree to work with a partner agency. We knew we had to remove that. So in that, we changed our eligibility requirements, given that so many people were facing reduced hours, reduced wages, and job loss totally. We launched our emergency assistance program, removing that barrier. So initially, it was around, the need was around food insecurity, rent, utilities. Those needs still remain, and we're seeing an increase, especially as the government assistance was slow to reach our families. And then also what we're seeing is this complexity of my kids are out of school. I can either no longer work or I can't work from home because I have no childcare. And so as we're seeing childcare facilities open, we're seeing a bit of an increase, but there's also a bit of hysteria and uncertainty around if kids do go back to school in the fall and it's only for 1 day or 2 days, what does that look like and how does that impact our clients' ability to gain and maintain employment? One of the stories that I will share, we had a woman veteran who was recently transitioning out of the Marine Corps, and she got caught up in the chaos of COVID. So after being offered employment, she showed up to her first day and was asked to go home because they were over max. And then after calling and being on hold for hours, she finally received an email stating that they would cancel all her shifts due to overhiring. And so, you know, she came to us and said she reached out to multiple organizations and started to really lose faith that she was going to be able to survive this. And then through our organization helping her, she's so appreciative, but also felt acknowledged in her service as a woman, which often is overshadowed. The thing that really keeps me up at night are single mothers and how they're going to navigate right now, and then as we approach this impending second wave and what that's going to look like. To date, we've served around 350 women through our services since COVID began.
Wow, another team working around the clock, it sounds like. That's awesome. Thank you so much. And I didn't really know much about your organization. Actually, Debbie Anderson at Rancho Santa Fe Foundation is a huge admirer, and that's been one of the beauties of working together on this fund, is that we've been able to, you know, connect with those organizations that we have you know, prior relationships with, which has also helped because we tried very hard not to have there be any sort of arduous application process. So I guess we really sort of putting that trust-based philanthropy in practice this way, but really admire the work that you do, and thank you so much. It's been great to get to know what you're all about.
Thank you so much.
Sure. So Jodie and Andrea shared a couple of stories in their presentation. And Greg, I wondered if you might have a story or two of any clients that Interfaith has served. They're just such a great way for us to connect the work.
Yeah, we have a podcast called Homeless in San Diego, and we release episodes every other week. So we're going to release another one tomorrow, and we just recorded it yesterday, so she's on my mind. Her name is Kimberly, and her experience is really, I think, more on the minds of a lot of people these days because of the killings of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and so many more, and the awakening that is happening among white people, the realization that of our own blind spots for many of us. Anyways, Kimberly was visiting family in the South in 2014, and police came to her door, arrested her, and she ended up being convicted of a crime she did not commit that happened 23 years prior, when she was a teenager. She spent 4 years in jail in California. She was extradited here, and then was ultimately exonerated and released. And then after a brief period of time, began to experience homelessness. And while only 5.5% of San Diego County identify as African American or Black, 27% of our homeless population are African American or from the Black community. And so she ended up coming here to our Haven House shelter, and she's amazing. Faith is what got her through it, she said repeatedly. My daughter gave me a bracelet this morning that says faith on it. So I don't know, there must be like something in the air. I think we all need a little faith this time, but then we also need to take action. Kimberly took amazing action. She got day labor, and then she got moved into administration for a local company. And then her hours got cut. She moved into an apartment of her own. She was there, and then COVID happened. Her hours got cut. So your support, those who are on this call who have supported this fund, are helping her to be able to stay housed, are helping her to be able to find different employment options. There's some other challenges that she's facing with transportation. Yeah, she's just one of many. It was Jodie, you mentioned childcare. Another family who we helped stay housed, graphic designer, usually works remotely. The work stopped amidst COVID. She wanted to go out and work in a retail and a grocery store, someplace that was still opening, but she had to take care of her kids, and she's a single mom. And so we see these things repeatedly. If anyone, kind of going back to Kimberly's story, wants to hear or check out our podcast, Homeless in San Diego, it's on all podcast devices, and we'll release that episode tomorrow. It's really, really powerful. She's amazing, and I think personifies a lot of what we're struggling with and challenging to do better throughout the country and locally as well.
That's great. Thank you so much, Greg. We'll also have, as Jenny said, we're recording this, and we will provide a link also for the podcast too. So we'll get that, and if you want to check that out, we'll be sure that you have it. It seems, I read an article this morning, and the first thing that it said was, are Americans over the pandemic? Are we kind of like, we've had enough, about all we can take is 3 months, and if that, and we're ready, to move on. And of course, there are the different theories of, cases are increasing, but are we getting closer to, vaccines? Is testing getting better? What have you? But I think what I'm hoping to talk about next is, could we go maybe a little bit deeper as to, if we're kind of over it, like we've had generous donors, they've given to this need, and there are so many important competing needs. What would be your sort of your take, I guess, on, the need is still great. We saw from Andrea's numbers, there's thousands of people who still need help. But if there's any specific statements that you could share to that effect, that would be great. Andrea, do you want to start that one?
Yeah, so I think, there's an interesting confluence of things happening with the pandemic and with the Black Lives Matter movement, right? And I think both of them expose systemic inequities and racial disparities in the system, in our system of services, in the way we fund, in what we choose to fund, right? And so I think in the short term, we need immediate relief for as many people as we can provide it for. And your fund has been playing a critical role in that regard. But in the longer run, we really need to start addressing that issue of systemic change, right? And so, we're working on that through the budgeting process at the local and state level, and we also I'll just mention here that we're also key players in the Schools and Communities First initiative, which is a revenue generator for the November ballot that will reclaim and reinvest money into the common good, the things that we all need to get ahead: community health care clinics, schools, job training programs, the very things that would address some of these inequities. So I think it's a yes and moment where we need to address the immediate needs and also understand that part of the immediate need is and the demographics of who is in need is an expression of the deep-seated inequities that we must address. We must prepare for the future, because we know that this pandemic is not the end of the crises that we're going to face.
Great, no, that's really helpful. Thank you. Jodie, do you have any thoughts about that?
I would just, absolutely. I would just echo what Andrea said in terms of, it's a yes and moment. I think that funders taking a look at what you're funding and who you're funding, as we tackle systemic racism, there was a recent New York Times article that really drew clarity around there is a lack of funding to Black and persons of color executive directors and CEOs that are doing this nonprofit work on systemic racism, and that their access to funding is limited. And so I think funders taking a look at who, like Andrea said, who they're funding and the work they're doing, and trying to be more conscious of that, because so many of these organizations that are doing the important work to defeat systemic racism are led by persons of color and Black leaders. So I would say that, and then also I think it's the onus is on leaders of nonprofit organizations as well to take a look at who you're serving and to be an advocate. It's not just homelessness, it's what is at the root of homelessness. For us, it's the intersection of gender and race, with over 40% of our women veterans that are receiving financial assistance being Black women. We can do a better job of aligning ourselves to speak more about the inequities.
Great, thank you so much. Greg, do you have any comments to this? I just don't want you to be left out.
Yeah, I mean, we work in partnership with North County law enforcement agencies, our social workers staff homeless outreach teams in partnership with their officers. And so on one hand, it may seem like, oh, wow, Interfaith may have a challenge being vocal in the Black Lives Matter movement, or being vocal in issues of police brutality or racial inequity as it relates to law enforcement. But we were talking about it with our team this morning, and we actually see what we do as an opportunity, as a practice that can be that is being advocated to do more of, because the law enforcement officers who we work with are not enforcement focused officers primarily. They're really focused on how to help people overcome challenges, and they acknowledge that they need people with additional skill sets like mental health clinicians when it comes to homelessness to be able to support and do that work. And some of our best teams haven't written a ticket in years. Teams we're working with. So we think that's a way that we can look at how we re-envision law enforcement. Yeah, it's very timely. We were talking about it just before this phone call, so I thought it was a nice thing to share with this group as well.
Wow, great. That's terrific. We could have a follow-up conversation on that. That would be really good. Along these same lines, I think we ask ourselves, those of us, working in nonprofits and in philanthropy, et cetera, it's like, how do we build the capacity of all of our professionals to be able to do the work that needs to be done? And so I guess I want to ask too, here in North County, what steps can we take very deliberately to build the capacity of Black nonprofit professionals and support Black CEOs, if you have any thoughts around that, it'd be great. Jodie, do you want to start that one? Do you want to put you?
I think taking a look at the organizations you're already serving and asking them, I think in the nonprofit sector, regardless of the industry or the issue or the market failure that you're working on, nonprofit leaders, have this cohort of other nonprofits that they see. And just like Debbie Anderson advocated for our organization and our work, it is, nonprofit leaders need to illuminate some of these organizations that would otherwise be unknown and advocate for their nonprofit leaders that are persons of color. I think that would be one way.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're a multiracial led organization that includes Black leadership. 25% of our staff is Black, and our coalition, the San Diego Immigrant Rights Consortium, SDIRC, is also a multiracial leadership team that includes Black leadership from different parts of the African diaspora, right? And so I think, we've done a lot of work to make sure that all of those many diverse voices, in particular Black voices, are a part of the conversation. And I think, it is a moment to absolutely elevate Black voices and leadership, and also do the work of addressing the concerns in your community. I don't live in North County, so I can't speak to North County specifically. And although our work is countywide, I think it's an incredible opportunity in a moment, and the movement has created space for change. It's created space for conversation. We're having conversations internally, even though we are probably further along than most organizations. There's always room for more conversation and room to understand that ultimately what we need to be doing is changing systems, addressing the immediate needs and changing systems. And that's the call to action right now of the movement, is to change the systems, not just the policing system, but the healthcare system, the budgeting that we do, education system, all of it needs to be very thoughtful and inclusive, and lift up Black lives in particular, not to the exclusion of other lives, but that is the call to action right now.
Great, it's really helpful. Thank you. Greg?
Interfaith Community Services is we have a very diverse staff. We have more than 200 employees. 15% identify as Black or African American, 31% Hispanic or Latino, 42% white, other multiracial, 71% female. But our leadership, while diverse, is not as diverse as the measurements I just shared. So we have work to do there, no doubt. I'm a white male, so that puts me in both it puts me in a different position, but it also puts me in a position to identify and own the white privilege that I've had my entire life. And we had a town hall meeting last Friday, and there was some really, really powerful sharing among our team of experiences that they've had. And I was really candid that I don't think I would be in the position I'm in if I wasn't a white male. I think the success I had early in my career as a fundraiser would have been different if I was a different type of person. And that's really awful. Like, that shouldn't be. But if I am not going to own that and speak to it and say, okay, I'm going to commit myself to address it in a different way, then I'm not doing what I need to do. At Interfaith, we created a racial justice working group that will be identifying both our advocacy platform externally, as well as identifying internal changes and practices. So I think we have a lot of work to do, but I think we're in a good place to do that work, and it's an opportunity that we all as individuals have to take up in this time and space. I'll say also, thinking about the other individuals on this call and our North County community, we have the Alliance for Regional Solutions, which is an amazing collaboration of more than 65 nonprofit organizations, all of our North County cities. And that group brings together the executives of the nonprofits every other month. We have next gathering is July 15th, I want to say. You can go to regionalsolutions.net and check that out. It's a great place for people to get involved and engaged. And I know that that group is going to be focused on how we can address the real lack of the need for more leadership of our nonprofits among people of color. I think in particular in North County, it's something we're really lacking.
Mm-hmm. That's really helpful. And you bring up a really good point, is how can we learn from each other in this? You know, you're all three are saying, you know, different things that you're doing within your organizations, which are really interesting and innovative. And I think sharing that out with others, because we're all trying to learn and do better. The other thing I was going to ask is, as you look for talent for your organizations, thinking around like the recruiting, you know, side, what could we be doing better in bringing Black professionals, you know, creating, I guess, the space to, you know, really put them in front of nonprofit executives. I know Interfaith does this a lot, you know, getting a lot of that talent out of the USD nonprofit management master's program and others for sure. So I don't know if additional scholarship support for things like that or any other ideas. Greg, do you want to start that one? Because you're a USD nonprofit alum for the master's.
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely tapping into local higher ed programs focused on nonprofits. The Alliance for Regional Solutions worked with Cal State San Marcos this last year to do a nonprofit management program. One of the newer leaders for one of our North County nonprofits went through that. I think we can do more of that. It was relatively affordable. It's about $1,000. Most organizations were able to pay the cost to send up and coming leaders into that program. So we need to do more training for up and coming leaders. And then we need to pay more. Like, you know, if you can't pay for your student loans, then it makes a nonprofit career a lot less attractive. And again, that speaks to white privilege. Like, I didn't have as much loans as a lot of my colleagues have had because of the privilege that I was born into. So we need to continue to address the systemic issues, but yeah, more support and I think from the funder community, you know, scholarships that are aimed at nonprofit emerging leaders is very helpful, and it's something that yeah, one of our longtime donors has supported for a long time, Mel Cohn, and it's helped dozens of people in this organization to move forward.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you so much, for sure. Jodie, any thoughts on this? Or?
I think, yes, scholarships. I think also reaching out to areas that you normally wouldn't think of. Yes, USD's program, I'm an alum as well, for the nonprofit leadership program, and I, you know, can't speak highly enough about that organization. But maybe the Nonprofit Institute, working with, you know, your partner organizations that are working on workforce employment, and, you know, being very deliberate and intentional about where you're posting your job position descriptions and doing your recruiting.
Mm-hmm. Great, that's really helpful. Andrea.
Yeah, I would echo what the other panelists have said, and then also, you know, look to other leadership training that's going on. We run a summer leadership training program, you know, specifically because a lot of our communities of color don't have access to the kinds of programs like the USD program. Mm-hmm. Their educational trajectory might not be the same, but they're emerging leaders nonetheless. And so, you know, we take a cohort of 30 every summer, and we actually, because we know about the burden of doing a program like this, meaning you're not working, we actually give money. We provide, it's free, and then we provide a $500 stipend to all the participants to get some training, movement training, social justice training, and training, skills training to be able to do this work. And we're happy to say that we've been a feeder into a lot of organizations and legislative offices. And so we see the value of it. And I'm just reflecting on my own experience, wanting to work. I wanted to work at a nonprofit in DC doing environmental justice work one summer, and it was a highly competitive job, and I got the offer, and I said, great, and how much are you going to pay me? And it was a minimum wage job to go to DC, and I couldn't do it. I just simply couldn't do it because I didn't have the resources to do it. And when I asked, well, how do other people do it? And they said, well, most people don't need to do anything else, but then they helped me, they were like, well, you could wait tables, you could do this, do that. I'm like, okay, yeah, I could do that. I could work multiple jobs. Isn't one job supposed to be enough? So anyways, we're not the only leadership training out there, but there are others that I think are very intentionally doing racial justice leadership training in this world.
Right. Yeah, you all provided some great pieces, for this. I think I didn't even know about some of these programs, getting them up here to North County, maybe some funders working together along those lines, funders providing, some additional support to our nonprofits specifically dedicated to training and development. Because of course, as budgets being tight, even in normal times, training and development is one of the things that you don't have to do, like you have to do other things. So those are really good lessons for us. A question that we got is about volunteers. So if, many of us, we want to give in a number of different ways, and or you don't have the resources, you want to give of yourself. And of course, the volunteer corps has been impacted. I know it has a lot of interfaith, and I'd love for you to talk about that, Greg. But in addition to attracting donors to the work that goes on, what about volunteers? Can you share? Greg, if you want to start, that'd be great.
We have about 600 volunteers that provide do skilled work. So they're helping provide legal services or case management, social services. Helping with employment, with resumes and mock interviews, things like that. 90% of them hard stop, could not come in once this went down. Mm-hmm. Most are older, a lot of them have health conditions, and so that really drove up the cost of doing business. We haven't spoken about it yet, but it's a good time to say we're in the midst of reconfiguring nearly a dozen locations throughout North County to be able to actually return to meeting with people face to face, as opposed to being in parking lots or over the phone or Zoom. Tired of Zoom, right? And that costs a ton of money. So that's another cost. But yeah, the volunteer hit has been significant. However, the benefit, the silver lining here, is we have a lot of new volunteers who want to help, who have never been involved before, who have had time on their hands and are willing to be a part of it. So we've seen a great new volunteer workforce, and now really focusing on ways that we can engage volunteers to work remotely, or ways that are safe for them. So volunteers who can go out and do shopping to support our senior residents and then deliver that food to their homes. Volunteers who can do that resume preparation, virtually. Obviously lots of things don't need to be done in person. So making those changes, but yeah, it's been quite an impact in the volunteer world.
Mm-hmm. So you would suggest then that folks interested in that contact an organization of interest and see how they might fit in. Yeah, definitely.
I know at Interfaith, all of our volunteer opportunities are on the website, interfaith.org. There's like dozens and dozens of them. And I know all of our organizations who rely on volunteers are making those changes. So absolutely, definitely reach out.
Great. Jodie, does Foundation for Women Warriors use a lot of volunteers?
I wouldn't say we use a lot, but we definitely have relied on volunteers for our workshops, and we do workshops in person a couple times a year throughout the various counties, and we do on-site mentoring, and then also, you know, the some of the preparation to host these workshops. One of the things that we did pivot on very early on amid COVID was we took any workshop session and we put it online relevant to the time. So we did crisis planning or crisis financial planning, where we had someone that would normally be a speaker on financial budgeting. She held a webinar with us and was then able to deliver how should you be looking at your finances amid COVID. We also have capacity for mentorship. It's something that I think as we're all home and some of us have a little bit more time than others, if you're looking to give back, you can go to our website and sign up through our partnership with a platform called Veterati to mentor. It uses your LinkedIn profile, and then you know, our mentees have access to thousands of people that have registered on the system, and it's a very easy way to give back, especially as people are trying to find work and broaden their networks and might not know about some remote work and whatnot. So that is definitely another way we employ volunteers. Also, I would say we partnered with STEP on one of their food drives, and though we're not hosting anything in person, we lent our volunteers to support that. It was another way we could collaborate. Some of our women were registered to receive food, and so lending our volunteer workforce to that was impactful for both STEP, our women veterans, and just for our partnership.
Mm-hmm. That's great. And for those who might not know, STEP is support for the enlisted project, right?
Correct.
Am I forgetting the T? Support for the enlisted project. It's also for recent veterans. A fantastic organization as well. Thank you. Andrea, any thoughts about volunteers, especially at the advocacy level? Yeah, I'll leave it to you.
Yeah, I mean, we usually operate with about 500 volunteers to do anything ranging from naturalization workshops to voter engagement work. And a lot of that has had to be suspended in this moment. We hope to bring it back online soon, but we're waiting. So I would say right now, go volunteer with Greg, because he really needs those volunteers. And, you know, in the digital realm, we welcome people to amplify our messaging and the advocacy work that we're doing. And we will figure out a way to bring people into the work that we do going forward, but we're not well equipped to be able to do that right now.
Got it. That's great. No, thank you so much. I think we have one more question, and that is, you know, as CEOs, you know, you're in that, your work is hard. You know, it's challenging, I should say, not hard, it's challenging. And people look to you all the time from your organization, and particularly now as there's uncertainty that people have about their jobs, uncertainty of their health, and you know, how safe they are at work. There's so much that all of us just don't know. Have you done anything special? And a couple of things have been mentioned in the call, but maybe just as a last, you know, bit of comment, in your leadership to kind of really foster the work culture and to help take care of your folks. Greg, if you want to start.
Yeah, we've done a ton. I mean, it feels like we've been in this for like years.
Yeah.
We were able to really early on provide a $1,000 per month resiliency bonus to all of our frontline staff who are providing in-person services. We are planning to conclude that at the end of this month, at which point all of our teams who will be getting those bonus, every individual who will have gotten the bonus will have gotten a bonus of $3,500. So that's something. We close early every other Friday to give our teams a couple hours of self-care. And then we've And then we've supported anyone with childcare needs to be able to address those needs. And if they are not able to work their normal job, that's fine. We've been able to figure that out. We're asking everyone to come back to work in July. Everyone so far has been able to figure out how to do that, but still working that out on a case-by-case basis. And then we just shared with our teams agency-wide, everybody, 2 additional personal holidays to be able to take time away for self-care. We changed our sick leave policy, so we have normally it's PTO, sick, vacation. If anyone has any COVID-related sick concerns, they can take time without charging it to PTO. We had an employee who ended up testing positive a few weeks ago, and it set off all the plans that we had put in place, because we operate a lot of residential programs, and so there's a lot of challenges there. We have a health center here on site with neighborhood healthcare. I'm in Escondido right now, and with neighborhood healthcare, we actually tested 118 residents and staff and volunteers in 2 days. We're so fortunate that all 118 came back negative. And so we were able to confirm that our practices, may have worked in stopping that. And thank God, most importantly of all, our colleague has gotten better and is back at work and is doing great. So, it's just like, that's real, right? Like that's what's going on, and that's what our teams have been able to deal with. And they're heroes. They're amazing what they do. And so we're continually trying to find new ways to support them.
Those are great. Yeah. Andrea, anything staff-wise, culture-wise?
Yeah, no, for sure. So we have pulled together more closely as a team. We have increased the frequency of our staff meetings, which are all Zoom meetings, so we can see each other, check in. More than anything, it's just a safe space to share, to be. We have several staff members who are isolated, and so this moment is hitting people in different ways. And again, it's the confluence now of activities of the police brutality that we're witnessing and the pandemic, right? So creating space for staff. We also we are providing monthly cell phone reimbursements to everyone, because we recognize that everyone in the remote world is now using their own equipment. We did check out, all of our laptops to our canvassers, and so they've all been working remotely, and really just trying to hold space, support people with the time that they need. We also are giving people hours every Friday afternoon to take time for themselves, and encouraging people to take time if they need it without charging it against their PTO or their sick time. So just being generous, being patient in this moment is what we're trying to do.
Great, thank you. Jodie?
I think I had to get a bit creative. In terms of financially not being able to meet in person, we run to June 30th on our quarter, so on our fiscal year. So not being able to meet in person, I had to take a look at our cash position and get conservative. And so that meant reducing my own salary, and then taking a look at reducing our employee hours. So we, our board collected funds to help offset our employees' costs with groceries. And then we also included our employees on our programming that was centered around managing anxiety with mindfulness. We had a clinical psychologist come in and do a session on mindfulness, and then also do an introduction to meditation. We are a smaller team, and so we reserved, our typical team meetings for our team meetings, but then another meeting where we could do things like trivia, or just have a session to talk about our feelings or what's going on and how it's impacting us, and trying to be as patient with one another, knowing that everyone processes stress and anxiety and the world around them at a different pace than everyone. So I think that I I reflect upon this time a lot like when I was in the military, and when you're in an austere environment, really navigating uncertainty together brings you together stronger. And so dividing, equally sacrificing and being transparent with one another has definitely strengthened our team.
Great. Well, you guys are great bosses. It's really, really nice. We had a question come in. Oh, we got it. Okay. So Greg, if you could just say again the websites for Alliance for Regional Solutions and the Homelessness Task Force. And we can share these out also, but for folks who might just be listening.
Sure. The Alliance for Regional Solutions website is www.regionalsolutions.net. And that group runs a coordinated shelter network in North County, runs a workforce group, North County Works, runs a case managers network, bringing together social workers. It's a group focused on seniors, and also a food policy council. And there's more on there. It's all on the website, regionalsolutions.net. The Regional Task Force on the Homeless is RTFHSD, Regional Task Force on the Homeless, SD.org. Yeah.
Great, thank you so much. Well, I think that'll pretty much do it. You know, we wanted to kind of keep it to an hour, and we know you guys are really busy too. Any last thoughts before we thank you so much again for joining us today?
Just for our funder community, our greatest concern at Interfaith Community Services from a financial perspective is that we've seen a lot of funders be very generous in responding to COVID-19. And our concern is what's going to happen in December of 2020, what's going to happen in 2021. And are the grants that are being made, whether by individuals or foundations, are they special above and beyond grants to meet above and beyond needs? Or are they just advances that are going to rob from our operations at the end of the year? Because we build our budget around the financial support that we're so fortunate to receive. So, so as I say, thank you to all of you, and especially Sharon and LeachTag for organizing today. I just will call out that reality that we're going to really, and all of us who do this work will be pinched even more so in the future than we are now. So really appreciate the fact that, you know, we'll be working together on that.
Right. No, that's a great thought. We have gotten that question a lot. So that's very important for all of us, not to lose that sight that you all have important organizations that were doing work with, you know, vulnerable populations before this all started. So we have to sustain those. Any other last comments?
Yeah, I would say to echo Greg, you know, we are blessed in San Diego to have a really rich service community of nonprofits and social justice community of nonprofits, right? And I think that, you know, understanding that we are best prepared when we have the capacity, the sustained capacity to do the work that we do is a good reminder. And then just to remember that it's about the immediate response, and it's about the ongoing work to change the systems so that we're better prepared in the future. I think that's important to keep in mind, in a way to balance the giving, and also a way to not lose hope, right? Because it can feel like a you know, fire hose of need, but if you're able to for a torrent of water, and if you're able to go upstream and fix the underlying problems, then you won't have that torrent.
Right. That's a good point. Absolutely. Jodie, any last thoughts?
I just want to say thank you to all of the funders and everyone that took some time to join today. I echo what both Greg and Andrea said. I think that, you know, an investment in our organization and the veteran community is an investment in something that immediately gives back. We have such a grateful veteran base that even in some of our testimonials, these women are eager to get back to work so that they can pay our organization back. And that's just a testament to how amazing veterans are, but the San Diego community is, because they know that San Diego really supports them. And I appreciate the support as well.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Please know you're appreciated and supported and admired by all of us. And Jenny, if you want to close us out.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Just two really quick announcements. Next Wednesday, June 17th, we have a free workshop with Jack Berkman, and that's going to be on PR and how to shift your message in this age of COVID and virtual world that we're living in. And then June 24th is going to be our next Leadership Count session, and we're going to be focusing on the state of philanthropy. So hope that you can join us. The links are in the chat, so I'll leave this on for just a moment if you want to save those links, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Great.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good rest of your day. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Bye. All right.
Everyone, I'm leaving the
Oh, you're
chat
right.
up
We still have a few. Yeah. We still have a few.
just in case anyone wants to copy anything.
Yeah, that's great. And I can put stuff in, I'll do a follow-up email and I can put stuff in there too.
Okay, bye.
Okay, I'll see you later. Thank you so much for everything.
Yeah.